Hey Punk Outlaws, Buddha Gem, and appreciate your video response as always. I'm going to try to respond back. I'm exhausted right now, so I'm going to probably ramble a little bit, but let's see, where should I start? First off, the idea that the stockholder is like part owner, and the nebulous or ambiguous concept of ownership in our society, especially with corporate property, it's very confusing. As far as the stockholder, the individual stockholder, most of us who maybe have some stock, it's ridiculous to think that we're owners. We're not. I mean, if you own any stock or you know anybody, have them go to a shareholders meeting and try to influence the company. It's not going to happen. I mean, unless you're, a very wealthy person who owns a considerable amount of stock, you're not going to be listened to. And there's been numerous instances reported in the business press over the, even the last few years, where people like us had that silly notion that we're owners. They've gone to these meetings and been thrown out, in some cases, laughed at, shunned. You're only an owner in theory within these institutions. As far as the mechanic example went, I think it was a good example. I think it confused, or I don't know. It missed the point of what I was saying, because it's very different. Okay, I own a vehicle. Like I've owned my car for 14 years. It's very different for me to take it to a mechanic for a small amount of time and have it back. My car in the last 14 years, I don't know. It's not been at a mechanic's very long. I'd say a week total. I don't know. It's no major work's been done on it in 14 years. I've had, you know what I'm saying. It's out of the whole stretch of that 14 years, it's like this tiny little fraction of time it has been in the possession or in the control of someone else. And that gets back to our society. I mean, we live in a specialized society where we don't and we can't know everything. We have to rely on each other. There are certain things that you know that I don't know. There are certain things I know that you don't know, and it goes throughout the country and the world. And we rely on each other. There's a ton of things I just can't do. I don't have the knowledge, but we specialize like that, and then we rely on each other. And that's where I think a philosophy like yours kind of fails, is that it's so radically individualistic. It doesn't take that that networking, that cooperation, that fundamental human aspect of our society into consideration. I mean, it radically atomizes people, and I think that's a problem. Now, in the example I was given, I wasn't speaking particularly of corporations necessarily, but just this idea that there are people out there in this society who own so much stuff that they cannot manage it. And manage is what I try to make the case for, is, essentially it's another word for owning. I mean, if you're not managing your stuff, you're not owning your stuff. So it's oxymoronic to say, you're going to have someone else manage your property. Because, and let's think about it. I mean, realistically, you don't have somebody, if you have, 10,000 housing units, you don't have them manage it for a small fraction of time. Like the mechanic who works on my car for maybe, a couple hours out of a day, and then bam, it's back in my possession. Now you own 10,000 rental units. You don't own those ever. Ever, ever, ever. I mean, the people who live in them own them, really. And then you have like some other company or group of individuals who manage them, who effectively are act as the owners, and then you as the legal owner benefit from this arrangement. But it's a completely fictitious, abstract arrangement that doesn't have any bearing in reality. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that you could own houses, that you are never going to live in. You're never going to actually manage them or own them in any real sense. So maybe what I got out of your video was, you know, a valid point. That it's not an absolute difference. It's not absolutely different that, you know, I take my car to the mechanic and have him manage my vehicle for X amount of time, as, you know, same with the, you know, the property owner. But it's such a vast difference in degree. You know, I own my car or manage my car 99.9% of the time, right? Whereas the wealthy in this country don't ever manage their property. Never. You know, and that's not an exaggeration. Think about it. I mean, they own factories, houses, land that they will never set foot in, never operate, never use. So in no real sense do they own these things. That's what I'm getting at. They don't. It's just a fiction. It's an idea that we fall into. This idea, like, that Bill Gates owns Microsoft Windows. How ridiculous is that? I mean, if you really think it through, it's ridiculous. I mean, Microsoft Windows is on my computer. How does Bill Gates in Washington or wherever he is, how does he own something that's sitting in my room right here? It's a ridiculous notion. And so I think one way to look at that is this idea of management, this idea that, you know, people own, at least in this paradigm we live in, they own so much stuff that they can't possibly manage it. And then we think, well, manage is really just another word for ownership. So in a sense, they're not owning it at all, but yet they are still benefiting from this fictitious legal arrangement that we have kind of bought into. I'm probably rambling, so I'm exhausted. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But, you know, I did appreciate the response, and hope you have a good night. Peace.